Today's episode includes some stories that'll crawl under your skin and stay there. But before we get started, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then welcome, because that's all we do and we upload every day. So if that's something you're into, please volunteer to walk the like button's dog. Then, halfway through, just drop the leash and whisper, "You're free now." Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Also, subscribe and turn on all notifications so you don't miss our daily uploads. Okay, let's begin.
He moved into a house that wasn't empty. All right, today's story takes place in a quiet Hudson River town, late October 2021. It starts like a normal move-in. It does not stay that way. Rowan Kell is 37, lean, practical, the kind of guy who has carried other people's boxes for years and finally gets to carry his own. He buys a tall, tired Victorian on Wemple Street widow's walk, slouching porch, stained glass over the stairs. On paper, the house has been empty for a season. Before that, a retired school librarian lived here. The listing says, "Charming details." It does not list the other detail. Listings never do. Night 1. The Hudson is dark as melted iron. A freight moans across the bridge. Leaves drag the gutters. Rowan backs a rental truck to the curb, sets a hand on the rail, and feels old paint give. Inside smells like dust and lemon oil. The floor has that note old houses sing when they map where feet prefer to travel. He makes a bed, sort of. Cooks eggs in his grandmother's pan, eats by the open kitchen door. To the west, wind chimes arguing with themselves. To the east, a radio playing Old Soul so quietly it feels like someone pacing a kitchen. 11:48, he takes the trash to the alley, inhales the cold. A cat posts up at the fence like a bouncer. He laughs, goes in, deadbolt, chain, lights off except a small lamp in the front parlor. 12:17. From the kitchen, a drawer opens, wood on wood, soft, then closes. He's not asleep. He's in that new house mode where your brain catalogs every sound like pop quiz questions. The drawer again. Same speed, same breath. A single spoon ticks the divider like a hand lifted it, weighed it, set it back. Rowan breathes, runs the script. Houses settle. Pipes rehearse. Mice sound huge at night. He pads in on cold boards. Every drawer is flush. The counter is polite and empty. Moonlight makes a pale square on the table. He opens the top drawer and shuts it, imitating the sound. Okay, brain, there you go. He puts water on for tea because people who aren't afraid make tea at midnight and that's when he sees it. On the pantry door, shoulder height, a little wax circle, a fingertip habit mark. Years of touch, wiped and redrawn. Not fresh, not ancient, just used. Morning is chores, locks, heat, chimney. The locksmith, Nate, admires the old brass and swaps the cylinder. A neighbor shows up with a casserole wrapped in a cherry towel. Her name's Avril Peak. She bakes when weather thinks too hard. She mentions the librarian kept hours you could set a watch by and casually says, if the attic fusses after midnight, check radiators before raccoons. These old girls bang. After lunch, the house tells him a secret. In the coat closet, his elbow finds a seam. He presses. A narrow panel sighs opens steep servant steps between pantry and the back corner upstairs. He shuts it, opens it again, because that's what you do when a wall suddenly becomes a door and dusts the threshold to see if anything uses it later. That night, the river breathes colder. He writes a list at the kitchen table. 12:20. Toothbrush in his mouth. The dumbwaiter slides 2 inches and stops. Rope creaks. Goes still. He watches the pantry door in the mirror until the fog clears. 1:44. He wakes to the smell of toast. The toaster is unplugged. He quietly laughs at himself and rolls over. Day 3. Riverwalk, hardware store, Goodwill drop. He returns at 4 and through the frosted front glass sees a shaped shoulder, hand step back. He enters slow. The air smells faintly of lilac drawer sachets. On the entry table, a small tissue bundle. Inside, a brass key, smooth as a worry stone, stamped with a single letter B and a scratched number 1. Not one of his. In the kitchen, a thin line of flour has moved, like a cup was set and lifted. A cup is clean, drying on the towel. In the pantry, the dumbwaiter rope quivers and stills. At the back stair threshold where he dusted, half-moon prints. Not boots, not bare, soft sole, small or careful. Rowan opens the closet panel and speaks into that narrow dark. Calm. I own this house. I move slow. I don't throw people away. If you're real and you want to stay real, tell me your name. He hears a decision being made. A scuff at the top. A pause on the third tread. That small, quick run we all do to pretend we're not afraid. She appears on the last step. Late 50s. Hair pinned. Cardigan mended. With proud little stitches. Wool socks in tired slippers. Her eyes scan, land on his, and choose honesty. I'm Imry Blakely. I looked after Miss Renner for a year and a half after the snow that broke her hip. I stayed after the service because the realtor kept telling me the date and I couldn't hear it. The pantry door knows me. The back stair knows me. I didn't mean to startle you. I made tea because a house should know the sound. Whatever speech Rowan thought he'd give, gone. He says the one true sentence he has. I wondered if the dumbwaiter was flirting with me. Imry almost smiles. The key? Service key, she says. Miss Renner gave it to me when the ramp went in. I hid it under the flour tin because I hide important things in unimportant places. You were at the river. I set it out when I heard you would fit your own name here. Rowan. That's a name that can learn a house. They move to the kitchen like two people agreeing not to break anything. In better light, he sees her cardigan buttons are all wrong sizes, her amber ring chipped smooth by years, and her hands jar-opening hands. She apologizes for the flour. She baked biscuits yesterday because the house woke up hungry. There are 3 in a tin, second shelf. She's not a thief. Then I owe you butter, he says, and the kettle, which has been placed cold on a burner out of habit, gets clicked on for real. Over tea, she gives him the owner's manual, no inspector rights, where radiators bang after rain, how the pantry hinge forgives more quickly if you hum, wax the dumbwaiter rope in November, scold it in July. The cellar light needs 2 breaths to remember it's a light. The center post should have been replaced 20 years ago. The house forgives it monthly. The drawer, top right, always slides back a spoon's width. Miss Renner kept a rubber band there because elastic keeps secrets better than a latch. The sound he heard was the spoon settling. The house was pointing at the elastic. Imry stands. I'm in your way. I meant to say goodbye and got embarrassed. I'll leave by the back stair. I'll leave the key. If the pipes talk too much, call. Rowan surprises them both. Stay for supper. Averill brought a casserole. I repay towns by eating what they hand me. They eat coats on because the heat schedule's still formal. Imry tells small, dignified stories. Miss Renner sang morning hymns without believing because habit and comfort share a coat. The back bedroom, under the little eave, wakes early on snow days. Whoever sleeps there will always beat the plow to the first cup. The cast iron sink has a comma-shaped chip, permission to keep going when a sentence seems finished. Before she leaves, Imry asks for a plain blessing. Not church, just something to keep people from sharpening themselves on the wrong edges. She closes her eyes, breathes once, and says to the floorboards, "We will act like neighbors, even when we don't believe in that word. We will be dull when the house asks us to be dull. We will answer with our bodies only when we are sure our names will be kept. We will not talk to empty rooms about the wrong things, not after dark." The panel closes on her shoulder. The quiet that follows feels chosen, not imposed. Rowan drops the service key in a little dish by the door. Tools like to know where they live. Weeks pass. He learns the wall of stained glass catches fire at a certain hour. He files a note with the county to acknowledge the back stair and the title. Some arrangements need paper when a house changes names. He returns Avril's towel with a loaf of something he hopes counts as baking. Sometimes he finds signs of Imri that aren't mistakes. A box of matches where there weren't any, a clean cloth folded where he'd left a crumpled one, a tidy list on the underside of a pantry shelf, wax rope, check lint trap, tuck draft snake. He writes thank you in the margin with a dull pencil. Late November, Avril appears with a county inspector who measures politely and asks the best question a bureaucrat can ask. Does this panel count as a door or a hatch? Rowan says it counts as a secret that deserves to be acknowledged. The inspector actually writes that down. That night, the wind returns with a dry old paper hand. Far on the river, a horn pulls a long, low goodbye that never is. At 1:44 in the Eve bedroom, Rowan wakes and listens. Radiator tap, dumbwaiter's shy inch, the spoon's little settle, a jar lid pop like someone forgot to loosen it. He smiles into the dark and whispers the rule he's learned here. Not answering. Not tonight. In December, the first snow is generous. Rowan learns to broom the steps like porchmen do, always pushing to the same drift, so it learns its place. Imri leaves a cream card with her new address. Basement studio, window facing a black walnut, part-time job at the county historical typing ledgers, saying names out loud so they don't think they're finished. She asks one favor. There's a trunk in the attic. Miss Renner's aunt, Minta Thorne, kept a diary for 50 years, careful and mean in the best way. The family would like the trunk if it can come down without swearing at the rafters. They climb the front stairs on purpose. The attic opens with paint stick reluctance, then generosity. Boxes are labeled in a librarian's hand, winter scarves, not this one, photographs, country cousins, bird journals, 1980 to 2010. The trunk waits under the peak leather straps, tack heads like stars. They don't open it. Not yet. They carry it down between them one step at a time, like moving a sleeping parent. It rests on folded towels in the hall overnight because old things deserve a chance to decide to be seen again. Next day, the niece Lorna Vetch arrives with grocery tulips and a cake. In the parlor light, they lift out muslin-wrapped books, a cloth bag of buttons, a county fair postcard for a totally average pie that still won a ribbon, a small silver bell on frayed red ribbon, and 3 glass marbles that for no reason never lost their shine. They leave the bell and the marbles. The books go with Lorna. She cries. No one apologizes. Imri thanks the air and without looking at Rowan, squeezes his forearm. This house could have eaten the trunk. You didn't let it. The town weaves itself in. Lux Odea, the sash guy, fixes a window in exchange for shelves and a long story about a boat. Avril brings a pie when the weatherman says icy mix. Sometimes Imri knocks at the front, sometimes she ghosts the back stair. Either way, she says hello like joining a sentence, not starting one. January. A title office woman arrives, shivering with a folder. We're filing a small correction. Our system dislikes a door inside a closet. We're trying to teach it manners. She looks past him once, homesick, and says, My mother used to tell me, the walls aren't thin, honey. The walls listen. Be boring on purpose. See how long the trouble lasts. By March, the house is ordinary, which, if you've ever lived with an old place, means dear. At 1:44, the kitchen makes the spoon sound and then doesn't. He doesn't get up. He thinks about that first night and his urgent need to explain things. He thinks about the word empty and realizes it's never been fair to rooms or to people. He thinks about the service key in its dish, the wax circle on the pantry door, the trunk asleep in another house now, and the sentence that has started living under his tongue, we are boring on purpose when the house asks us to be. Spring loosens the river's shoulder, sycamores light up pale green, windows remember they have hinges. On a Saturday in late April, he hosts a small dinner. Avril, Lux, Imri, Lorna. The stained glass holds a sunbeam like a jewel you don't have to own to admire. They eat food that doesn't try too hard. Say names. Avoid lazy. How's work? When the dumbwaiter creaks, everyone notices and then lets it be. That's what families do for the oldest relative in the room. Night falls. Dishes done. Leftovers sent home. Rowan stands in the hall, touches the pantry with the back of his fingers. The wax circle is nearly rubbed away, worn down by his own small reverence. He clicks the chain, turns the deadbolt, sets the kettle just to tell the house what time it is. From the back stair, a single tread answers. Not a knock, not a warning, just wood on wood. Patience. A place teaching a person to hear the difference. Rowan doesn't ask who, he doesn't answer. He folds the cherry print towel and tucks it in the drawer where elastic lives. He breathes in, breathes out. The night listens back, and it does not feel empty at all. What happened inside the tunnel changed him forever. It starts with first snow over the Cheat River, late November, year 2011. The kind of ash-colored flurry that only sticks where the mountain keeps its shade. Down in the cut, where an old railroad spur once ran through Brushy Mountain, there's a brick-lined tunnel that still breathes iron and limestone like it never retired. Locals know. Places like that are older than whatever story you brought with you. The man who walked in that night was 38-year-old Thayer Mott. 2 years home from a blistering overseas contract where dawn came with a buzzer and the heat tried to erase you daily. Back in West Virginia, he did county roads, cones, culverts, sleeves, rolled exactly the way your grandfather approves of. Off the clock, he carried radios for fun, listened to the weather net the way other men listened to baseball. Thayer lived alone in a small cottage that apologized every winter for one window that never sealed right. And he had a rule: write things down and the world behaves, at least for a while. At exactly 1950, by a cheap, luminous watch whose hands never lied, Thayer stepped into the Brushy portal. He'd told dispatch Lenox Vale that he'd walk the right of way from Brushy to Quarry, check drains, note a small rock slide from last week, headlamp, warm white, a spare in his pocket because batteries lie. He descended the stone throat. Brick arched overhead, ballast underfoot, old rails long since lifted clean for quick money. He kept to the shoulder, counted steps, scraped slate from the crown with the toe of his boot, and wrote little facts on a card because little facts keep the big ones honest. 50 steps. The foot sound changed dry to damp. The tunnel sound, river on stone, temperature wind, steady drip settled around him. And then at 2012, something new slid in beside him. Not ahead, not behind, beside. A girl's voice. Not echo, not machine. A child's cadence without the child's confidence. First a rising vowel like someone tuning their courage. Then a single word delivered with precise hope. Thayer. Tuklo. He did not answer. In Monongahela County, rule number 1 for deep places is simple. When the dark learns your proper name, do not answer. The voice tried again. Thayer. A tiny clatter shoe to bottle somewhere along the brick. A little grit slithered down the wall. Thayer laid his left palm flat to the tunnel to tell his nerves where his body ended, lifted his radio with his right, and went bureaucratic on purpose. County Mott, Brushy Tunnel, on foot, moving west. I have a voice event. Log it at 2012. I'm not answering. Continuing slow to center. Line of retreat established. Over. Lennox came back with the calm you hear from storm spotters who've seen it all. Copy voice event. Keep that lamp honest. And if the dark tries to be clever, you be boring back. Thayer moved 10 careful steps. The story he didn't request kept coming. The floor sagged a half-inch subsurface water chewing quietly at the bed. The left wall had the tiniest bow. A weeping drain left a snail-clean stripe. He crouched, touched the wet, tasted iron and cold limestone, flagged it, kept going. The voice shadowed him, not obedient, but parallel. Third try, it used the weapon, it had his name, and then added a confession. Even worse in a tunnel. I followed the light and I can't find it now. The hiss after the last consonant, tears. He pictured a dozen real kids from a dozen real houses. He ignored every single picture. He reached the midpoint. Roof resonance turned musical, air more stone than river, that weird acoustic, almost song-round spaces get. He let the headlamp rest on his boots and counted his heart twice. That's when the tunnel itself changed its mind. A long, deep breath in the brick. A liquid rush underfoot like a drain clearing its throat after months. And from far ahead, one hollow knock as if wood tapped wood in a place with no wood. County, he said evenly. New sounds, water movement under bed. I don't love the word void, so I won't use it, but the floor is considering options. I'm heading quarry side and will hold. Over. 10 minutes into that retreat, the brick made a quiet, serious sound. Only people who've been around masonry hear mortar unlatching. He shot the lamp up. A hair-fine seam ran lengthwise across the crown, like a hand-drawn horizon. He didn't run, he left. The daylight made the world small again. He sat on a frost-etched limestone chunk and breathed until gravity stopped arguing. He waited for backup. Sheriff Enoch Pyatt arrived ex-mine rescue, slow until work begins. Good lamp. Rope in a hasty coil. He listened without interruption, nodded once like the night had finally learned to tell its story right. They went in together. Pyatt pushed a broader beam holes live where danger sits. The seam was worse. 3 bricks down, the line dropped like a child slipping while holding hands. Then the voice returned. Not Thayer this time. One word that made both men remember there was a ridge above them and an even bigger sky above that. Daddy. Pyatt went to one knee, palm on brick, like you calm an old dog. He didn't answer the voice. He addressed the wall. We're not breaking you tonight. No names. We'll bring math, shoring, and bored people who'd rather argue football than be brave. A small clatter. 30 paces ahead, standing water, a foam cup with a crescent bite drifting, ripples walking out, dying polite. They backed. They called in 2 volunteers with timbers and wedges. Inside, they propped either side of the seam so Goodwood could talk to bad ideas. Denied, the voice grew patient in a nasty way, humming, please, measuring consciences, waiting for a slip. Pyatt looked at the crew, head out. To Thayer, your report will say we stayed for the welfare check, left for structural reasons. The other reason they didn't say, the seam and the voice had begun to sound like the same thing. The county fenced Brushy indefinitely, which translated means permanently. Teenagers found new holes. Grown men found other ways to leave their lives for an hour. Thayer went back to culverts and shoulders and the safe ache of good work. But the tunnel wasn't done with him. January brought gray armor to the river, wind to the sycamores, and a call from the county, meet Hobie Kress at the quarry side. Hobie was a snowshoe happy content guy who posted reverent videos in places that do not want influencers. He'd filmed himself stepping 5 feet inside the arch and dusting snow off his hat like he was blessing it. The county wanted a conversation, not cuffs. Against his will, Thayer liked Hobie. Clean cut, the smile of a man forgiven by the world for 30 years. Thayer said, the brick is tired, the river is mean, the air is not your friend. For once, Hobie listened. Then Hobie said something that wiped the smirk off. Fate. Thought I heard a kid in there. Thayer asked. What did she say? Hobie blinked. Just my name. So Thayer started stopping by the portal after supper. Not to be a hero, to be a witness. Some nights need witnesses. Late February, year 2012. Thaw hit too fast. The valley filled with water's angry negotiations. 2 a.m. The volunteer chief blows the horn. Pyatt calls Thayer the kind of hour you don't justify your choice of company. At Brushy, the fence lay meek in briars. The tunnel exhaled a runner's breath. They set a line, moved to mark 3, and stopped, floor sound wrong. Pyatt's ankles calibrated by years said, Hollow wants a friend. Down tunnel, a light, not theirs. Clean, white, fresh batteries, eager to please. A man's voice. Mara, Mara, honey, answer me. Then the noise rescue people know in their bones. A foot into nothing. Scrabble. A half-swallowed curse because the man believed in God and wanted his attention, not anybody else's. Thayer dimmed, angled, reached, and caught Pyatt's sleeve not to yank to warn bones. He projected county calm over a private prayer. Sir, stop. Aim your light at your boots. We're county. We're coming to you on a line. Don't step. Don't say her name again. The man froze like a new company rule just slid down from corporate. He lifted his light, then remembered and put it back on the floor where it belongs. Thayer and Pyatt bellied the last distance. A pocket of water had eaten everything under 5 ties. A plank mercifully there bridged. They slid the man back, clipped him, and sent him out on a promise of coffee. He would later tell the paper he cried, and no one made him feel small for it. He would not tell them the name the tunnel whispered to him to get him inside. When his light was gone, the tunnel was not quiet. The voice came one last time. Not the child. Or the child, upgraded for cruelty. Your father called for you, and you did not come. Pyatt closed his eyes by reflex, opened them on purpose. Thayer didn't move. He thought of a fluorescent desert overseas. A generator droning in 2 notes you can hear through walls. He thought of a high school hallway where the light always flickered and a teacher never once guessed what he might be good at. He thought of his mother laying a dish towel over biscuits she couldn't afford and doing it anyway because sometimes a boy needs to see abundance he didn't earn. He radioed in a voice that knew how to hold a line. At seam, water in bed, void under ties, 10 to 15, past Mark 3. 1 civilian retrieved. Tunnel practicing party tricks. We are leaving in a walk. After the flood signed its name and crews policed the driftwood, small pieces that look like birds, big pieces that look like law, the county rebuilt the fence, bolted the sign, and kept the order permanent. The tunnel stayed. The voice, if it stayed, learned boredom because this county does not answer. What the tunnel changed in Thayer wasn't superstition, it was speed. He started talking slower to people who live half their lives in the dark. He learned to stand on the downstream side of a bad decision, so if someone ignored a fence, his body'd be where it needed to catch them. He untied his boots on the porch, not the kitchen. Thresholds matter. Spring, the county finally replaced that chronic sycamore. A woman, Hetty Dockery, knocked on Thayer's door with a box of rooted maple slips and a photograph from her father's desk. A girl in an expensive dress and a useful coat gone since the 1970s. Hetty asked if he'd go with her to the portal and speak the name once. He didn't correct her, he went. She said the name. The tunnel gave back a sound like the end of a hymn key change. No organ. On the walk down, she stepped steadier than on the way up. Thayer married late. A nurse whose laugh lingers in rooms after the door shuts. They bought high ground, a porch that never needs apology, a basement that never needs courage. Some nights he writes 2 lines to keep the past small. The tunnel is still there, I am still here. In church, when a baby cries during a hymn, he doesn't wince. He lets the sound pass through like a storm already spent over another ridge. Ask him at the gas pump. No nonsense what the voice was. He'll give you the closest truth he owns. The dark repeats whatever it hears most. In a county that refuses to answer when a hole throws names at them, the dark learns boredom and moves on. He'll say it while checking tire pressure before driving out to a grumbling culvert. He'll be behind on sleep and alive. Teenagers will still swear Brushy has a ghost. Good. The night's big enough for practice. Daylight's big enough to remember a man went in, came back, and adjusted his life 1 click slower. Every November, first ash snow clinging to Brushy's shoulder, Thayer pulls into the turnout, kills the engine, and listens. Sometimes nothing. Good. Sometimes river talking to stone. Better. Once in a while, a faint knock. Wood on wood, in a place with no wood. He does the thing that saved him in the tunnel and saves him in living rooms and hospital corridors where grief learns to smoke. He doesn't answer. He breathes. He makes the world small. He turns the key and drives to the next address, where a drain needs to remember what a drain is. What happened inside that tunnel did change him into the kind of man who practices slow, decent caution. Rope in the truck, second lamp in the pocket, habit of calling the county when a night grows teeth, and taped to the fridge, written in words, not numbers, a simple instruction for the people he loves on some future windy night when the siding is practicing scales. If you hear your name from a place that cannot love you, do not answer. Count to 20, call me. Count to 20 again, I'm on my way. She answered the wrong knock at midnight. In the winter of 2018, the town of Bethel, Maine wore its silence like armor. Tuesday night, late January. New snow laid out in neat ribs along every curb where the plows had already passed. Porch lights glowed the color of weak tea. From the river came a long inhale that never quite exhaled. Inside a narrow blue house on Vernon Street, a lamp threw a warm circle across a kitchen table. A single watch ticked on a hook by the pantry, steady, polite, unhurried. The owner, Corinne Moreau, stood in wool socks, rinsing the last coffee cup from the adult class she taught on keeping family histories. It was the kind of work that lets a person listen more than talk, and she loved it for that. Her red knit cap sat low, her cheeks were still wind bright from the walk home. A heavy parka steamed on a folding chair. On the back step, a milk crate of sand and a shovel, small rituals for a long season. Around midnight, the blue house settled one tiny creak, a reminder that wood remembers weather. Somewhere, far off, a train laid down two thin notes. Corinne turned off the sink, reached for the lamp chain, and then it happened. 3 knuckles touched the front door. Not a pound, not frantic. 3 light, even taps, the kind you give a house when you believe it's already awake. Corinne blinked. Midnight visitors belonged to July porches and borrowed sugar, not a January freeze where even the dogs had the good sense to stay in. She listened. The house leaned with her. 3 more taps, identically spaced, like a metronome living inside whoever stood outside. She took unhurried steps through the dining room, past a braided rug, a shelf of old mill photos, a jar of leftover fir boughs. She stopped 3 feet from the door. Bethel is the sort of town where you can identify a neighbor by the shape of their boot prints. She hadn't heard any prints come up the wooden stairs, but new snow swallows a lot of sins. She set a hand on the chain. "Yes?" she called level. "Who's there?" A pause long enough to count to 4. Then a soft, tired voice, young or simply worn out by the night. "Sorry, ma'am, I'm looking for the Deans. Wrong house, I think." The Deans lived 2 streets over near the school. Mustard clapboard, perennial porch light. Corinne pictured a face gone red with cold and embarrassment. She kept the chain engaged, turned the deadbolt, and cracked the door an inch, then 2. Cold came in like a hand. No one stood there. In the pale coin of her porch light, empty boards, black wet seams where snow was melting on the rail, the faint hiss of flakes falling without wind. The street lay smooth and unwalked, a quilt. She lifted her eyes. Nothing moved. "Hello," she said. "I heard you. I can help you find the Deans." Silence. Something in her, something practical and sharp, disliked the game. She shortened the chain 1 link and eased the door shut. 3 more taps. Not at the door, at the living room window. Light, quick, like a sparrow asking to be let in. Corinne pivoted, left the front door on its chain, crossed to the dark window, and clicked on the lamp. In the glass, she saw her own reflection, cap low, mouth set. Outside, a blank yard, lilac bushes and white shoulders, no prints pushing toward the house. Behind her, the chain made a tiny metallic sigh, as if the door had settled. Corinne wasn't a fearful woman, she was a list maker. Lists fix chaos. If there's a problem in Bethel, somebody has a phone number for it. She reached for her mobile, found it under a magazine, and let the screen light her cheek. She considered reasons: a teen dare, a drunk apology, a stranger embarrassed to need help. She flipped the light to flashlight and went back to the door to test the chain. On the second link, the metal popped a bright tiny snap, a necklace breaking. The door opened another inch, not because she pulled, but because the swollen jam had been waiting for permission. Colder air slid inside. The porch looked like static. No silhouette, no shadow, just stillness. The unnerving kind you feel when a familiar room has been ever so slightly rearranged. Stop, she told herself. The door, the night. She closed it, reset what was left of the chain, threw the deadbolt, and put a palm flat on the wood. Out loud. For her own nervous system, she took inventory. Door shut, chain up, deadbolt engaged. I'm inside. Snow on the porch. No footprints. It's after midnight. I'm calling non-emergency now. Rilla at the sheriff's office answered with a flannel voice. Corinne summarized: 3 knocks, wrong name, empty porch, window taps. Rilla took the address, promised a deputy after helping a stranded car on Greenwood Road, and asked if Corinne was alone. Yes. Then, do not open again for anyone you can't see and greet through glass. Understood, Corinne said, and said Rilla's name back to her, because names make long nights shorter. She switched off the hall light and watched her street from the living room window. Across the way, the blue house was dark. Miss Doyen had gone to Lewiston for the week. A camper sagged under a tarp. Farther down, the broker's wire reindeer still stood in their thin fur coats. Snow hushed everything. The heater sighed and fell silent. Shadows stretched, then tightened. Her reflection in the window became a stranger standing too close. She looked at the doormat, no melt. The rail, no hand. A soft shuffle at the back door. She didn't flinch. She moved by plan. The back door had a small square of frosted glass. Anyone became a blur behind it. Corinne set her fingertips on the wood. Deputy? She called, letting the word do some work. If that's you, please speak. The shuffle paused, then nudged left, where the sand crate Saturday. Plastic tapped softly, like a toe on a toy. Fox? Curious neighbor? Someone deciding whether to be decent? A thin snake of cold slid under the gap and wrapped her ankles. She saw herself, from above, a woman in wool socks coaxing her house into staying brave. Please, a voice said, but not from outside, from the dark phone in her hand, a live line hollowness. Please, can you help me? Wrong house. Wrong number. I have the wrong number. She woke the screen. No incoming call, only her outgoing to the sheriff. She set the phone on the counter like it was an egg she didn't want to crack and realized her mouth had gone dry. A glass of water steadied her hands. Her teeth clicked the rim. Small, human, ordinary. The back door knocked again. Not gentle now. 3 careful, even raps with weight behind them. The doorknob twitched, tested, stopped. Headlights washed Vernon Street with white bars. A cruiser idled. A brown-jacketed shape stepped into her porch light and raised a hand. Corinne's whole body let go. Deputy K. Bourdain, tired, decent, stood in snow-dusted eyebrows and a hat that had seen winters before this one. Evening, ma'am. You called about a knock? She told it straight. The taps. The wrong name. The empty porch. The window. The back door. The voice on a silent phone. He didn't smirk. He did the quiet arithmetic of a person paid to stand between strangers and the night. He asked to walk the perimeter. She waved him on. His beam skimmed low, the way you do when you care about tracks more than drama, he murmured to his radio. When he came back, cuffs whitened. He shook his head once. Not a print, he said. Doormat stone cold. New powder should have told on anyone coming up your steps. If they were here, they were careful or weightless. It read like a joke, it didn't feel like one. He thumbed the snap chain like a jeweler. Old metal. January is mean to things that work hard. He left a card. If it happens again, call, don't open. Even if it says my name, if it knows my name, call twice. He drove off with the small promises that keep small towns upright. Corinne reset the door, stood by the window until the glass grew warm under the lamp, placed the broken link on the table, and said the deputy's name out loud. Kellen Bourdain. The pantry watch ticked once in agreement. Sleep didn't come. She didn't insist. She dozed, sitting up in her grandmother's chair, to the heater's patient cycle and the sibilant peace of falling snow. Morning arrived honest. Plows took back the street with orange mouths. Coffee turned the world 1 degree kinder. Corinne ordered a new chain and deadbolt. The hardware owner offered to drop them by just to have something to do. By lunch, the bright brass was installed and the house breathed easier. By late morning, she'd nearly filed the whole thing under odd but survivable. She phoned the Dean's No Midnight Wanderer. She checked on Mr. Bix. His porch light would stay on. The librarian, honor Bly friend, former student, stopped by with a scarf over her mouth. Rilla says your house tried on a ghost. A generous word for a good knock, Corinne said, making tea. When she mentioned the voice through a dark phone, Honor's hand went to her own pocket. My Aunt Reba got a call during the 2009 storm, Honor said, from my uncle's number. He was on the couch next to her. No sound. Then a voice used her name like it had a library card. She set the phone down and said my uncle's name twice. The voice said, no, like it was correcting her. Did she believe it? I believed the way she sounded when she finished, like she'd passed a test she never agreed to take. They made a plan. Supper at Honors above the library, cards, easy conversation. At 3:40, the hardware man fit the new chain, talking loudly and cheerfully about a raccoon that learned to knock with a spoon. Corinne dropped the broken link into her desk. Not to keep, just not to throw away on the day it happened. The evening at Honors was ordinary, in the best way. Garlic, old paper, a radio station from the middle of the country. At 10:10, Corinne walked home under a coin moon, let herself into the blue house at 10:32, and set her keys in the bowl. At 10:36, 2 quick knocks at the front door. She stood with her palm a hand width from the wood. I'm not opening, she said, frank but not rude. Say your name and purpose or try another address. Silence. Then the almost bass of a voice felt in the chest more than heard. Please. Wrong door, wrong number. Same words. Heavier. She killed the lamp, let the room go, exterior, scanned the street. Plenty of prints now from a day of living, but none fresh to her steps. The kettle clicked on the stove. The ordinary arrived right on time. She poured tea, decided her mouth would speak only on purpose. At 11:03, 3 polite knocks at the back door. She dialed non-emergency again. This time Kent answered voice like sand. A car was close. She thanked him twice. She braced her feet, let her body remember its own width, watched the frost square turn the dark to lace. The knob didn't move. Deputy Bourdain returned, eyebrows full of starlight. We're going to pretend I came because I missed your lamp, he said. They walked the lot lines. His light wrote arcs on snow. They listened to soil with their hands. He left another card and one practical instruction. If she left town, tell him. He'd swing by. Saturday passed. Sunday brought distant bells and a walk for oranges. Monday pulled bright curtains, then closed them early. No knocks. Corinne's shoulders dropped. Tea tasted like kept promises. The broken link stayed unchanged in the drawer. Then Tuesday, full circle. At 11:56 p.m., 4 minutes shy of the same hour, a voice came from the little radio by her kitchen clock. It was unplugged. It said her name quietly and asked if she was there. Her throat chose its loyalties. She approached, didn't touch, listened to the way vowels met consonants, stepped back, and said, like iron, that the county had rules for midnight and she was old enough to follow them. It tried other doors. The living room vent pinged her name as the heat came on. The phone rang with no number. The dead doorbell found its resurrection. Each time the voice asked for a person, not a favor, it tried town names like Keys, Miss Doyon, Mr. Bix, Honor, Rilla. It even tried Kellen Bourdain, as if it had learned the card in her hand. She smiled despite herself. Deputy, she corrected the air. Not tonight. She let the tea go cold. She laid no hand on any handle. She apologized for nothing, not even her stubbornness. At 3 minutes past midnight, she felt it lose interest. The house exhaled. The radio remembered it was a radio. Air moved room to room with nothing to ask. Corinne set the kettle once more, carried a mug to the window, and stood until her reflection looked like a person whose name had been kept safe. Then she slept like someone had tucked a quilt around the town. Over the next week, stories salted Bethel. A woman on North Road heard a screen door open and close for nobody. A late dog walker heard tapping on stop signs like a patient hammer. The mail carrier heard her name from a garage and almost answered before remembering what day it was. No one was dragged into snow. Locks held. People learned one sentence and used it when darkness stood close. Not tonight, not this house. When the river loosened and the sun laid a silver road across it, Corinne and Honor watched the water tell itself a story. They ate pie at the diner and called fine what it was victory. On the way home, Corinne passed the dean's mustard house and thought of that first polite voice. She detoured, set a gloved hand on their rail, and said their name into the wood, a practice she'd adopted, give places back their proper nouns. At her own door, the new chain shone ridiculous and perfect against blue paint. She ran a thumb over it and heard the small metal truth. Tonight will be ordinary. Keys in the bowl. The watch ticked. The heater hummed. The fridge sighed like an old man. From the street, 3 knocks. Not on her door, on the blue house next door, where Miss Doyon's son-in-law was picking up the last of her winter clothes. A harmless sound, not a summons. Corinne felt sudden tears. The body likes to test itself and then be returned to ease. She laughed Small Bell back in tune and said the sentence she meant to keep for every winter that followed. We don't answer the wrong knock at midnight. We count it. We name the hour. We call the people whose job is the porch. And we keep our names warm inside our mouths until morning reminds every room who belongs where. In spring, when the town smelled like wet earth and hope, Corinne swapped the fur for tulips, oiled the hinges, watched the river take its time. In summer, she carried the broken chain link to the bridge and tossed it in. It flashed once small, bright fish and vanished. She stayed to listen to the water write its own sentences, wearing the quiet expression of someone who had been invited to a test, had closed the door gently, and had chosen again to stay. The missing campers were never alone. Today's story takes place in Idaho's Salmon Chalice backcountry. Late September 2018. 2 campers vanish near an old fire lookout. Search teams go in, radios crackle, dogs work. Then a voice in the timber starts saying one of their names. And the rule out there, the one they don't put on maps, is simple. If a voice calls your name and there isn't a mouth you can see, you don't answer. Sunday night. Rain falling in thin ropes, polite but insistent. The granite smells like a coin. Weekend traffic bleeds east. In Shoup, the cafe lights go down. The river keeps its sentence. On the 3rd floor of the county building in Salmon, under humming fluorescence, dispatcher Kaya Merritt settles a headset and sips from a chipped mug. 41, good at hearing the difference between wind on a mic and fear in a throat. At 21:47, the primary line rings a childlike rhythm. Kaya picks up a careful male voice. I need to report 2 overdue campers, my cousins. I'm next to their truck at the Loon Creek turnoff. The camp host told me to call before I get brave. Kaya goes methodical. Names, Ivor Doss, 42. Lena Doss, 38. Boise people. Left yesterday with a light kit and ridiculous amount of jerky. Destination, ridge by the old Jarvie lookout. They brought a radio. They also brought stubbornness. Stay with the truck, Kaya says. Do not step into timber. Coordinates go into the form twice, clean. Deputy Roland Knapp, 39, a face that makes people tell the truth by accident, drops a cup of stew and starts his hour-long drive. Ranger Nick Salcedo checks in from a cabin near Panther Creek. Patient voice. Knows where people make their first wrong decision. By 2240, red and blue lights lay themselves across wet trunks at Loon Creek. The blue Ford is locked. A map inside is soaked, still readable in a bleeding wet. Camp host materializes. The pair planned the ridge, backed in for an early exit. Rain's coming, he'd warned. Rain brings the air alive, they'd said. Nick slides the map onto the tailgate. A penciled circle on the ridge. A dotted line up the wrong drainage, then corrected like a man who doesn't like admitting guesses. Beside the circle, Lena's neat list. Stove, coffee, headlamp, prayer. Time matters, Nick says. No volunteer conga line onto wet granite at midnight. Cousin stays with the deputy. We do this steady. At 1, they find the camp the way you sometimes do. Ghost of a new fire ring, a tiny cairn somebody couldn't resist. A boot print Rain is trying to steal. 2 sets. Walking together. Roland Marks calls it brings them back. Morning plan gets written like an anchor. Kaya works the night like a loom. Tracks down Lena's sister in Meridian, leaves a message that is compassion twice and panic never. Calls in a K-9 team ode to the county. In her log, she writes 5 quiet words only she will see. Do not answer a name. Dawn. Cloud lifts, leaving diamonds on every needle. 15 people drink black coffee at a folding table. Nix runs a finger over the map and splits the country into sectors. He adds the rule, the one you only hear from people who have earned your trust. If you hear a name and there's no visible mouth, lock eyes with your buddy, say their name, make them say yours. Do not answer anything from timber, not even if it uses your song. A new kid raises a hand. Is that folklore or a line I can put in a report? It's how you get home for lunch, Nix says. Teams move out with that respectful, quiet September pines demand. Dogs in bright vests quarter the slope. One line takes the spine, another slides into a black burn, snags like busted metronomes. Thayer, the cousin who made the call, walks with Deputy Knapp, not because he should, but because men who wait at trucks break in slow ways. At 9:19, a dog gives a small bark. I found your idea, not yet your person. Handler Ione Taggart slips among ferns and retrieves a rolled shirt under a low lodgepole limb. Damp collar. Tiny stitched L. Bag. Tag. Ritual keeps hearts from shouting. 10:52. A voice calls a name. Thin through timber, left of the draw, where a baby creek is deciding what to be. Lena. 2 syllables shaped like someone speaking into a scarf. Sounds like Ivor. Except Ivor's voice usually laughs at the edges. This one doesn't. It says her name and waits like a bridge. Nix lifts a hand. Heads swivel. Everyone refines a face. Thayer. Thayer. Roland. The voice tries again. Help. A dog bristles, then thinks better of it. Wind turns the voice into a trick. Now above, now behind, now whispering from the leaves at their boots. Lena? Roland plants a ribbon and a thyme on a larch and draws an arrow fatter than the rest. We don't answer, he says, calm enough to steady the world. We mark and move. By noon, sun saws through the cloud and turns steam into foxfire. Teams reset. Dogs drink in wide licks. The medic truck ladles sugar into paper cups. Kaya slides each bead of the day onto a string, times, places, and a line that means more than the paper can hold. Voice saying, Lena. No face. Afternoon, a different kind of luck. Farspur team finds a neat cone stack beside a rock scratch. Lena, her sister will later say, loves to arrange things. The cones point toward a cleft the map calls nothing. Old guys at the cafe used to call it buzzard slot. At 16:31, they find Ivor. He's on his back, one leg crooked the wrong way, eyes open to the sky like he's willing to believe in it, lips split white with thirst. He makes a sound that's half apology, half joy. We stayed on the spine, dropped too fast, rain shoved us into a bad shelter. We heard the lookout radio from the valley, the weather loop, thought it was a truck, followed it, found no truck. Then we heard Lena's name, my voice saying it, but not mine. I didn't answer. That's why I'm still here. Where's Lena? Nix asks from the edge of the circle. Went to water, said she'd follow a trail of tin cans and bad jokes back to me, left a cone pile every 30 steps. Then the voice said my name, like her mouth. I said hers once, too soft for the trees to catch. After that, I held my tongue. She's been gone since just before sunup. 1754. They find Lena. 10 minutes east, 2 pitches up, tucked into a granite room. One hand on a ledge like she meant to pull herself into another day, and paused here. Cold, not lost. Shy pulse. Hairline cut with the head's usual drama. Jerky pouch, empty. Pockets full of gravel, her attempt at a breadcrumb trail in a place that only Prince would stone. Wind keeps the helicopter on a leash, so they burrito the pair in foil, wool, and intention. Move them by patient inches. Dogs trot with tails up, doing what dogs were born to do. Ivor talks about coffee like a religion. Lena says river like a baptism. On the tailgate under a county floodlight, lines running into arms, Lena gets her question to work. The voice, she tells Nix, it said his name. It came from the wrong place, above, behind, under my feet. I didn't answer. I counted to 50, then 50 again. Sat on my hands so they wouldn't lift like a trained dog. I just repeated your rule. Find a face. Say a name you can see. People get hurt up here when they answer a mouth that doesn't have their best in mind. You did right. Thayer. Because brains want drawers to push fear into we were never alone, were we? Lena gives a small, tilted smile. That's mountains for you. You're with wind. With water. With old decisions other people made and left hanging in the trees. We borrowed theirs. Wind behaves. Helicopter drops in. Medics step out with faces that make mothers cry from relief alone. They pack the dosses like a wedding dress into a trunk and lift. A scrub pine below the ridge, bows, releases, bows again. After midnight, Kaya types the sentence that chased her all day. The missing campers were never alone. She knows it's not a checkbox, she puts it in anyway. The weeks after, the valley chews it. In diners, it was echo. On lifts, radio bounce. In coveralls, catamount. Brain mirrors, and then quieter. The one sentence that matters. If you hear your name in timber and there's no mouth in sight, don't answer. A month later, blue sky so clean it feels stolen. The Dosses bring a paper bag to the ranger cabin. Knit hats, plain and practical. On the tag, Lena's neat line for when the wind forgets itself. They sit with Nix and, briefly, Kaya. Words are carefully unimportant. Nix talks burned hills, learning green. Ivor describes a mispainted bridge, teaching Boise patience. Lena says she now speaks her people's names out loud each morning, not to offer anything to the air, just to remind her mouth what it's for. She adds one small thing, offhand. Counting while it called, I pictured roll call. Teacher calls your name chalk in her hand. You only say here if you can see the chalk. That helped. By next fall, a laminated card shows up on the camp host board at Loon Creek. No sermon, just a rule in rainproof letters. If you're overdue, sit, count, save heat, call only when you see a face. Do not answer the timber. No author. The host denies it, then admits he likes that he would have. Winter lays down thin law. One dawn in a high cabin, a radio unplugged, says a name perfectly. The men grin like at an old joke. They say each other's names and keep making eggs. Sun clears the window. They follow the line they marked in gray light and find a snowmobiler parked like a guy at a bus stop choosing a story. He says, I heard you all night. They say, not us, friend, but we're here now. Years later, at the Shoop Cafe, Sunday closing time, you might hear it slide by. Loggers arguing about draws, a couple practicing their baby's name, somebody at the counter saying, "Those campers below Jarvie, they weren't alone." Nobody is out there. The hills keep you company, sometimes too well. If you catch Kaya after a shift, headset marks on her face, she won't give you a ghost story. But if you ask what she learned that September, she'll look at the river and say this: listening is work. Names are tools. Home is where you only answer when you can see who's asking. A town can hold itself together with a quiet rule repeated by people not interested in drama. She might even add, very soft, that the missing campers were never alone, and neither are you, if your hands stay steady and your mouth remembers when to keep its strength. Then she'll tip well, step into a night that smells like pine and iron and rain, and head home where a clock mutters forward, a radio sleeps politely, and the mountains lean in, listening like they always do. The recording that should have never been played. Late September, 2013. Central Kansas. Wheat laid flat by wind that came off the prairie in long, mean sheets. The Sumner County Historical Annex, an old brick co-op turned archive, sat there taking it. Inside, one lamp, one table, one woman. Her name was Vesper Lyle, 38. Precise. The kind of voice you imagine coming off a radio tower at dawn. Archivist on paper, stubborn caretaker in practice. That night she stayed late because the road crew dumped a pallet of boxes from a foreclosed farmhouse north of Caldwell. Ledger books, seed catalogs, Polaroids gone to ghosts. Then the fourth box, wrapped in a green bath towel, gone gray at the edges, a shoebox cassette recorder, handle cracked, church label on the underside, bruised purple from age. Someone had written a name in laundry marker, then crossed it out. Beneath it, a new line in neat hand: East Meridian Baptist. Choir room. Do not circulate. Vesper did what good archivists do. Carded it, numbered it, turned her lamp so the warm circle held the machine like a stage. And then the wind rattled the front door. Lightning blew out the entry glass. She reached for the switch, turned, and froze. The play button was down. The reels were crawling, lazy, stubborn, as if the tape was heavy with whatever it was about to make the room remember. Vesper crossed the floor, pressed stop. The button fought her like it'd been glued in place by time. The reels sighed to a halt. She laughed once, no humor in it, locked the thing in a steel cabinet at her feet, and called dispatch. Torenhovel answered. Midnight voice. She told him about the storm, the boxes, the busted cartwheel. She did not mention the recorder. People who work nights don't invite extra work into a room. At 7:58 p.m., the rain came sideways, overheads dipped, then died. Her lamp fizzled off. The building went aquarium dim under the exit signs. She pulled the flashlight, swung the beam to the cabinet. The door was open. Inside, the play button was down again, the spools moving, barely. A hiss rose, grain by grain. Then the human room hum like heat caught on ribbon decades ago. A woman cleared her throat. Trained voice, hymnal vowels. The room she was in back then held her like warm wood. If you have found this and you are not me, please stop, the woman said. Calm, terribly calm. This is not for you. This is for my own coward heart, to replay until I change. Vesper did not move. Rain hammered, then softened. The voice kept going. My name is Vion Hargris, East Meridian. Thursday evening, late 2003. After choir, the hour when pews stop pretending and exhale. I put this recorder on the piano because I cannot trust myself with eyes. I'm going to say what I have not said. Then I'm going to the parsonage to hang my shame on the doorknob like a wet scarf. I will knock. I will be who I am without apology. I will ask for mercy like it's not a crime in a town this small. A chair creaked. Somewhere inside Vesper's chest, something old sat up and listened. A second voice joined. A man, lower than gossip, higher than thunder, the sound of someone trying not to be heard through a door. Vion. In the way he said her name lived a whole book. I know, she answered. We are not alone. The tape caught a door. A breath of hallway. A new voice, young, not little, leaned into the recorder. Hello, Dax, the man said. What are you doing here? My mother forgot her purse, the kid said. She's in the car, trying not to be angry with you. That sentence weighed more than the storm outside. Vesper thumbed, stop. The button sank a fraction and bounced back. The reels didn't care. They turned. You can take it, Vion told the kid, her kindness like a practiced skill. Second window. Tell your mother I'll drive behind you. Tell her I will come talk. Not long, in a way that matters. Footsteps leaving. Door. Wind gone. The room settling. This is foolish, the man said. His voice dropped half a tone. It's not our job to make the town new. It's our job to keep it from tearing itself apart. It's our job to be honest, she said. Every consonant a lit match. If the choir can sing the truth 3 nights a month, we can do it once. Lightning hit so close the annex shook. The beam hiccuped, the tape thinned, battery dying, and then out of that wobble, one more word. Please. Vesper pressed stop hard. The machine obeyed. The building exhaled. She locked the cabinet and wrote herself a note in block letters. Do not play again. Call Reverend Ardell in the morning. Ask about East Meridian 2003 choir. She tucked it under her thermos lid, swept the flashlight once across the blind faces of 100 yearbooks, missed the cabinet easing open, missed the tired spring choosing itself in the dark. Morning. Sky scrubbed clean. East Meridian Baptist was the color of unsalted crackers. The door was unlocked. Of course it was. Inside, it smelled like old wood, vacuum belts, and a sweetness she couldn't place until she saw 3 chrysanthemums in 3 vases, each like an apology for being bought late in the season. A woman in a blue sweater crossed the aisle with bulletins in both hands. Maria. Short hair you wear after an illness and back. She already knew Vesper's name Reverend Ardell had called, and she already knew the question. Vion Hargress, she said, settling Vesper into a pew. Contralto, you could build a roof on. That year, cut this town open. She helped truth into songs. Truth into Tupperware on your porch. When it wouldn't fit a hymn, she died in the spring. Not all things wait for permission. And the man? Vesper asked, hating herself a little. He left, Maria said softly. That week. Sends coat money at Christmas. Signs from far away. The mother with the purse forgave him once on Maine, and he flinched like she'd thrown a stone. What can a tape do that memory hasn't already done? Vesper thanked her. 2 sleeves touched for a second like a pact between strangers. Back at the annex, she set the recorder on the table and microwaved tea because the air felt wrong. At 1:12 p.m., the bell on the door didn't ring. It just opened. Tall man, Kansas State cap, jacket with 3 past lives. He moved like someone listening for a fire alarm only he could hear. Are you Vesper Lyle? He asked. She nodded. My name is Dax Hemphill. I grew up 6 miles east of East Meridian. My mother used to forget her purse. When she was tired of forgiving people, it gave her a reason to go back and be kind again. I think you have something that once listened to me when I was a boy. How did you know? Vesper asked. I woke at 3, he said. Clock doing that slow blink. Room smelled like hymnals. Heard my name the way it sounded before my voice changed. I don't own a tape player. Something spooled anyway. I remembered a night when a woman's kindness saved a man's job and a boy's faith. That kind of memory doesn't come back unless it's been invited. I think you invited it. She made him tea because that's what slows air. Told him about the recorder, the way it wouldn't stop, the please. He nodded like it fit a sore place he thought he'd hidden. Asked to hear it. She said, no, do not circulate, was written on the object itself. And archivists respect talismans. He asked again, but didn't move closer. the kind of stubborn she trusted. "I don't want to hear me," he said. "I want to hear her. The breath before she speaks. I want to remember what decency sounds like under bad lighting." Vesper turned the brass key, lifted the machine with both hands, wrote a sticky note in plain sight. "Hargress permission pending. Listening requested by Dax Hemphill." Then she pressed play. Hiss. Blanket of old air. Vion again, scratch brave. "If you are not me, stop. If you will not stop, at least do the kind thing and listen all the way through. I am done being half brave." The machine jumped ahead on its own, like it knew where today needed to land. Back to the two voices after the kid left. Tires over road seams. "We cannot," he said. "We must not. You will kill what mercy they have for me." "We can," she said, steadying him by syllable. "We must. Do you think the Lord is confused by us?" He said her name. She said his. The tape spared the names. Names belong to kitchens and porches, not cassette spools. The room on the tape breathed wood, carpet, a beat-to-death piano, a hymn board with 4 numbers that looked like a secret only children can't crack. Then a knock, not on the room's door, on the recorder. A tiny mosquito tap, a fingernail keeping a body from saying a big thing. Dax flinched. Vesper's eyes swept the annex. The annex held its breath, the way a building remembers why it was built, to store dangerous things gently. Vesper didn't stop it. Sometimes kindness is letting a sentence finish. "Fine," the man said, with funeral tiredness. "Fine, we will be what we are. Names in the paper. Second pew, let the looks do their best and fail. We will put our child," he stumbled, then finished. "Our child in the nursery when it cries. We will take turns walking it. We will call my mother and tell her the right story. We'll give your mother the same gift. We will be small for a season, then we will stop being small." The piano wood made a sound like grain turning to meet a new angle of attention. A hand set down. Someone breathed, "Oh." Static braided tight. Speed slid the way old tape does when a gear hesitates. Vion came back one last time, urgent. "If you are me, do not be a coward. If you are not me, do not make this a fable and sell it to yourself. This is not a ghost story. This is how to live." Click. Silence put its palms on everything. Shelves redrew their edges. Pencils remembered their jobs. Outside, the storm was now just damp behind the clouds. Dax covered his face with both hands. Vesper looked at the machine and thought of cellar jars with masking tape dates opened when the garden forgets its name. She hammered stop until stop decided to be true. Then came the work. Permission to request. A call to a woman 3 counties over who still carried the Hargress name and who, when she heard, said she had been waiting for that tape the way Valley people wait for apricots in June. Restrict access. Update the finding aid. Replace the sticky with a letter. And for 1 minute, they let the room have them. Archivist and stranger. Woman and man. 2 people sitting still, while an old backbone straightened inside a machine. Word got out anyway. It always does. Pickups. Break rooms. Space heaters. The story got wrong fast. A curse. A warning. A revival. They said it was a tornado siren played backward. They said if you listened at midnight, you'd hear your name the way only your grandmother said it. They said the recorder had no batteries and played all night. None of that was true. The truth was smaller, harder. The recorder played when lonely people stood too close and forgot to tell themselves the truth in time. In November, Torrin at dispatch heard his name, clean as winter, from the shelf with the lost and found bin. He stood up, said his name back out loud, into a room where another human could hear him, and the sound left the way regret leaves after 2 beers and a nap. He called Vesper. She told him to throw a towel over it, like you darken a bird cage when the bird thinks it's dawn. Reverend Nardale came at 2 on a weekday when Sun made long rugs on the annex floor. He asked to listen, cried without apology. Told Vesper he hadn't known back then how to keep rooms safe and people brave, and that the two were actually the same. He left a check for the leaky gutter. Memo line for roof. Nothing else. What else could you write? Winter sharpened everything. Spring mud had birthdays. Summer made the annex smell like paper and dry lemon peel. Vesper kept working her quiet miracles. She learned what thunder could change and what it could never touch. Late August, the tape did its last trick. It broke. Vesper was there, Dax too. He'd started stopping by, fixing the bad wheel, changing the bulbs nobody's ladder liked, because sometimes people earn comfortable silence after the first hard thing gets said. The machine chewed a loop into its own teeth. Vesper cupped it like a panicked bird. "It's okay," she whispered to plastic and time. "We've got you. We're listening." She had 3 clean copies made on a professional deck in Wichita. Masking labels, fire-safe box, permissions tucked like seed packets, on each in her sharp hand, to be played with consent only. And under it, softer. "Do not use this as weather." On the anniversary of the storm that shoved a box of wrong memories into her life, Vesper sat in the back pew at East Meridian. The building hummed with the quiet electricity of rooms that have been forgiven for what was done in them and what was refused and are willing, finally, to be only rooms again. Maria slid her a peppermint. They didn't say the names they weren't saying. The Hargress family wrote, "Keep it where it's surfaced. Don't let people make a party out of it. Let students hear it who think bravery is always big. Let tired people hear it when they need proof that decency can be made with 2 hands and 1 good sentence. Keep the names off. It doesn't need them." There was coffee and cookies in the annex hallway and a microphone that squealed once and then behaved. A reporter asked a trembling question. Vesper answered like someone who refuses to stage a drawing room drama when a kitchen table will do. "We're not here to gossip about the dead," she said. "We're here because a woman recorded who she chose to be and then did it. That's a civic treasure." The recorder sits now in a clear box so people can't love it wrong. On Saturdays, they ask if it plays by itself. Vesper says, "Only when you stand too close and forget you're alive and allowed to speak." Then she hands them a pencil and a form and teaches them how to leave something worth keeping for the next bad night. If you drive east out of Caldwell in late September and the sky bruises again, you might see a single lamp in one window. You might open the door, hear the chime, and breathe a room that smells like paper and patience. You might notice a soft hiss from a machine that retired from magic and kept its dignity. 2 people at a table, one with a pencil, one with a small wrench, bent over a ledger. You might understand why the recording should never have been played, and why, since it was, the only right response is to live in a way that won't require another like it. When the rain finally tears free, it will be loud and brief. Gutters will try their best. The annex will settle deeper into its foundation. On a shelf in a locked box, a cassette will keep its peace. And in 100 kitchens and a dozen sanctuaries, voices will go on doing what they were built to do when they belong to bodies willing to be ordinary and brave. They will say, "Please." They will say, "Stop." They will say, "Go now, it's time." And in the smallest, steady way that haunts longer than any ghost, they will say, "We are listening."